Hello everyone, welcome to another Stargate lore video. Today we're going to be talking about the Aschen of the Aschen Confederation.
It's like an entire planet of accountants.
History. When it comes to the history of the Aschen, we all have a vague outline of events of them prior to meeting SG-1. Twice, but we'll get to that. First, we know they are one of the groups of humans that were transplanted throughout the galaxy by the Goa'uld as slaves. At some point, the Aschen either led a rebellion and drove the Goa'uld away, or the Goa'uld abandoned the planet. Either way, the Stargate was buried. Sometime later it was uncovered, but they did not have a DHD. Due to this, their Stargate couldn't account for stellar drift, limiting the worlds they could travel to as ones being close to their homeworld, which for future reference we will call Aschen Prime. At some point during their expansion into space, they formed the Aschen Confederation. The next event we know about them is their first contact with SG-1. Don't worry, it makes sense when I explain it. In the year 2000, SG-1 was sent on a mission to the Stargate to Aschen Prime, where they made first contact. They would later on form an alliance against the Goa'uld. 10 years later, the Goa'uld had been defeated, most likely due to a bioweapon which had also nearly wiped out the Tok'ra and severely depleted the numbers of the Jaffa due to a lack of symbiotes. Despite that, Earth had become a technological paradise and had become a member of the Confederation. One of the new technologies was a drug that had prolonged human life. All in all, life seemed pretty good, but it was all a trap. While the drug does prolong human life, it also causes sterility, as Samantha Carter and Dr. Fraser found out while Sam was trying to get pregnant. This is how the Aschen conquer worlds, offer advanced technology and medicine, but sterilize the population, and when the numbers have decreased enough, they take control of the planet and turn it into a farm world. The former members of SG-1 realized they really had no way to fight the Aschen, so they elected to send a message back through time to warn their past selves not to go to Aschen Prime. They would all be killed in this attempt, but they did manage to send back a message. Under no circumstances go to P4C970, and Aschen Prime was locked out of the dialing computer. The Ashen's first contact with SG-1 was actually done through a third party, the Volians, in 2001. A people who the Aschen had conquered and turned their planet into one huge farmland. SG-1 made contact with them, who then introduced them to the Aschen. There were talks between the US government and the Aschen about trading technology and becoming allies, though as a quick side note, the Aschen would require that any treaty signed must be with all the nations of Earth, and they even offered membership in the Confederation. But Stargate Command found out that the Ashen's homeworld had a 1 in 4 chance of being the one that had been locked out of the dialing computer. Stargate Command would attempt to confirm this, however the government blocked them, not wanting to shatter any alliance. SG-1, however, had learned the Aschen did do something to the Volians and the remainder of the Volian cities. At a planned meeting before the signing of the treaty, Sam was able to trick the Aschen into admitting what they had done. Needless to say, the meeting went south from there, with the Aschen planning to send a bioweapon through the Stargate to Earth. Carter was able to stop them, but Ambassador Faxon was left behind. During the meeting, Earth had given the Aschen some gate addresses as a first gesture of goodwill. While the Aschen would leave with these addresses, it was revealed that Stargate Command had given them a series of bad addresses, the first one being a black hole, and the list got darker from there. As a quick side note, my main source of information outside of the show is the Phantom pages. There it states the Aschen homeworld was presumably destroyed after they dialed the black hole. However, I can't really find any evidence for that. In fact, in the book Stargate Relativity, which tells the story of the Aschen after this, we do learn why the number of Aschen scientists were killed. The planet itself is fine. Speaking of which, that book is the final story of the Aschen, in which the Aschen attempt to use a nomadic group of space travelers called the Pack in order to introduce a new sterility plague to Earth. However, a team is sent back through time to stop the Aschen, as it was revealed that the new sterility plague would mutate, leaving entire planets incapable of supporting life, and human life in general was facing extinction by the year 2033. They were stopped, but presumably the Aschen are still around. Biology. Biologically, the Aschen are virtually identical to the humans of Earth. The only noticeable difference is that the Aschen seem to be more sensitive to louder noises. Technology. The Aschen are hundreds of years more advanced than the Tari. Their greatest technological achievement is their understanding of biology. This allowed them to make medicines that can wipe out virtually any disease, though this has also led them to become the masters of biological warfare, such as their sterility drug. They also have teleportation technology, though it's more similar to the transportation rings used by the Goa'uld and is not as advanced as the Asgards. We also know that the Aschen have ships that travel between worlds in their confederation. In the book, we also learn they have warships, although that would probably go without saying. They also have harvesters, flying machines that collect crops and transport them back to Aschen Prime via the Stargate. We also know they have the technology to turn a gas giant into a star. They do this to increase crop production. But if I may take a side note, that is possibly the dumbest thing I think you could do. If you were to turn, say, Jupiter into a star, for example, you would throw the solar system into chaos, because by adding a new star into a solar system, you add its massive gravity, which would bring chaos as planets are thrown out of orbits, smash into each other, or be consumed by one of the two new stars. And yes, I'm aware based off this image the new sun is smaller than the old one, but even small stars have way more gravity than planets do. And also, even if you could do this and keep the solar system in order, would adding a second sun really increase crop production? This one is admittedly outside of my field of expertise, but I feel like that would just bring too much heat and kill all life on the planet, like oceans drying up or something. Society. We really don't know much about Aschen society. Of the few things we do know about it is that the Aschen don't really show emotion. As O'Neill said, it's like an entire planet of accountants. Besides their personalities, you see this in their clothing and architecture.
You'll find the predominant color to be gray. The buildings, the clothes, the people.
We also know they have a great amount of patience and like to think in the long term, waiting years for their plans to come to fruition. One might question why their government is called a confederation, as confederations are a decentralization of central power, and the Aschen seem to exert a lot of control over their member worlds. I think of 3 explanations for this. 1, it's just a name to make them look good, like how North Korea's official name is the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, despite being none of those things. It's not democratic, not a republic, and certainly not for its people. 2, it really is a confederation. As we're told by Volian, the Aschen generally leave the Volians to do whatever they want. Though I imagine if the Volians ever tried to leave the Confederation, the Aschen would come down hard on them. 3, and this is more of an out-of-universe reason, that being the writers just slapped a random name onto it. This has a tendency to happen in science fiction, where random government names are just slapped on with no regard of whether or not it's accurate.
The non-homeworld is now a protectorate of the Centauri Republic.
These things happen in a monarchy.
The Centauri Republic.
In a monarchy.
Republic.
Monarchy.
Relations with other races. I'd imagine the Aschen have very poor relations with other races, as the whole sterilizing and conquering thing tends to not go over well. That being said, the Volians seem to like the Aschen, though this is probably due to them forgetting what the Aschen had done to them. Other civilizations that the Aschen have conquered probably have similar feelings. But for those outside of the Confederation, such as Earth, who know what the Aschen would do, probably don't like them very much. Though an interesting thing to note is that during the first diplomatic meeting between the United States government and the Aschen, the Aschen did express an interest in meeting the more advanced races the United States had encountered. In the book I mentioned earlier, the Aschen had offered the Pack membership of the Confederation, though the Pack had turned them down. We're never really given a reason as to why. Maybe they just want to be aware of the other advanced races that could pose a threat. Maybe they want to conquer them too. Though I imagine that might not work, as the more advanced races could probably figure out what the Aschen were planning to do. And that was the Aschen. Sad they couldn't really find any fun facts about them, which again is really sad because I think they're one of the more interesting factions in Stargate. They're one of the few human groups that's advanced enough to travel space all on their own, and they're actively hostile to other groups. Definitely would have liked to see more of them, maybe even have them become either members or allies of the Aleutian Alliance, or even have them take up the power vacuum left behind when the Goa'uld Empire collapsed. But that's all speculation. Next time we talk about one of the other advanced human groups in the galaxy, the Tolan.